Hello, today's set of slides is going to go over things that you should not do in a lab report, specifically words and phrases that are not good to use. Lab reports are technical, hypothesis-driven scientific documents, and therefore the type of language that we use in these reports is a lot different than what you would use for a report in another class, an essay, or a story. One thing we want to avoid are words that convey opinion or a value judgment. When we're doing science, we're basically collecting data from an experiment and we're trying to come up with logical conclusions. Therefore, there's no value judgment or opinion on this. So words like good, bad, true, false, right, wrong, and believe are really inappropriate for a lab report. We want to avoid words that are too strong. A single set of experiments done by one group in one lab in one setting is not enough to prove anything. So let's avoid words that involve prove, proven, proved, or anything like that. We also want to avoid words that have a prediction in terms of something was supposed to happen or something should have happened. When we make hypotheses, we're making a prediction, but that doesn't mean our prediction is correct. That doesn't mean that there's any reason that that's what should have happened. That's just what we thought would happen. We were wrong. So please try to avoid things like that and instead use words like that was unexpected, we didn't predict that that was going to happen, or something else like that. We also want to avoid words that contain doubt about your research skills. So things like human error, mistakes, we messed up, we had issues, we did something wrong. These are things that are not really appropriate for a lab report either. If you made a mistake, then you just document what it was. You change the methods accordingly. If you know you made a mistake and your data is consistent with the mistake, then it's fine to mention that, or just change everything to fit that. So for example, if you added twice as much enzyme and you get twice as much product, then your quote-unquote mistake probably was what the result of affected the result. However, if you added twice as much enzyme and you get half as much product, then that doesn't even correlate. And so that's ridiculous to say, oh, we made this mistake and therefore we get this result. Well, it doesn't even follow. It's not logical. In every case, always try to come up with some scientific explanation for what it was that you think happened. You only want to talk about any quote-unquote mistakes that you made if there's no other explanation for what happened. We want to avoid words that are not technical. These are technical documents, and so we want to be very specific. We don't want to say things like deals with, or something had issues. We don't want to mention very vague terms like dots, spots, or lines. We want to mention things like cell fragments, or bands on the gel, or fragments of DNA. Be very specific, because all of these words don't really have any meaning and they don't contribute at all to the meaning of your sentences. We don't want to be too colloquial. This is not just a fun little thing that we're doing or a step-by-step manual. Let's talk about how to isolate protein. Oh, then you take your little pipette and go and do this with it, right? That's something like my 4th grade or 5th grade son would understand, and that's just really not appropriate for scientific documents. Finally, we want to avoid words that are in an incorrect context. There's some words, like the word represent, that are used colloquially very different than they are used in a lab report. In a lab report, the words represent and depict are ways to say that something represents or something stands in for something else. So when you say represent, it has to be that this diagram represents what we think happened in the test tube, right? You aren't showing what happened in the test tube, you're making a diagram to show what you think happened in the test tube. You don't say things like tube 1 represents the highest concentration of protein, because it's not representing protein. A tube is a tube. It's not representing anything. A tube can have the highest level, or it can contain the highest level of protein, but it does not represent the highest level. The last thing that I really want to mention is the word inaccurate. It's very easy for students to, again, use the hypothesis, and then if the data doesn't actually follow the hypothesis, they say that the data is inaccurate. And that's not true. Data is accurate as long as you measured it correctly. If you use the right machine or the right measuring utensil, and you had the right gradations so that you're not measuring something that's less than a millimeter using a centimeter ruler, then your measurements are accurate. right? The accuracy just depends on how well you measured it. So the only time you should use inaccurate is if you're measuring something and you don't have the proper tool to measure it accurately. So again, please try to avoid that. It's very important that you proofread your papers before you turn them in. Take these slides, this set and some of the other sets, maybe make some notes about these are things that I shouldn't have. Because it's very frustrating when the instructors are telling you don't do this or do this, and then it's not done that way. We have lots of help for you, and so make sure that you proofread it or have someone else proofread it so that you don't turn it in with some of those things that we're telling you to do or not to do. Finally, we all understand that technical writing is very difficult and it takes lots of practice, and it's probably not something you've done very much, but you can learn to do it with lots of practice and lots of drafts and lots of people proofreading and lots of people helping you out. So hang in there, you'll be okay.